Welcome to Liminal Radio. I'm Hatter.
And I'm Gray, and this is a Liminal Radio rabbit hole. Shorter episodes where we explore interesting horror topics.
Today's topic is going to be two-sentence horror stories. These have been around for quite some time. Earliest I can remember is like maybe 2013 I first found them.
There's an entire subreddit that is kind of the home base for two-sentence horror stories, and I love them because as a game designer, Mark Rosewater, who is one of the main designers for Magic the Gathering trading cards, who is one of my main inspirations for all sorts of design stuff, he had a very wise statement, which is restrictions breed creativity. So I feel like you can get some of the best stuff in a two-sentence horror story when it doesn't suck, and we'll discuss the ones that suck.
I 100% agree with that statement too, because, when you have a set of rules you need to work within, you have to crank up your brain a little bit more to really make it work. And then even beyond that, when you go to write something longer, you'll have that skill set. You'll have the ability to really cram in the creepy stuff in shorter amounts of time, and your work will be better for it.
It's why haiku are such an interesting form of poetry, because there are so many rules about them that you have to get really creative.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, well, I prefer to be unlimited in the things I do. I like to practice with shorter ones. So we actually collected a handful of these. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Some of them are straight up just funny. And we're going to read them to you, and we're going to give a little rating scale of 1 to 5 as to how we feel about them based on the rules we have. Now, do you want to go over the rules, Gray, or should I?
I'll go ahead and start some of the rules, and these are the criteria we're going to be using to judge these. One is kind of, is it scary? That it has to be in the horror genre, otherwise it doesn't really fit, because you can do comedy, you could do a two-sentence mystery. So it has to be horror-y, so there's got to be a scary element. It also needs to have what in comedy writing you call a left turn, which basically means there has to be a twist, there has to be something surprising about it. If it's very obvious where it's going from the beginning, it's not going to rate very highly.
Another rule I want to bring in here is that, first of all, it can't be too wordy. And if you're like putting a whole bunch of semicolons and commas and just to try and pad it out a little bit, it's not really a two-sentence horror story. All you did was add more sentences to it and use a technicality to bring them in. The other one is, I don't like when it feels like it's chopped off of a bigger story. The story should end with you like, oh, well, that happened. Not, wait, what happened next? Or what happened before this? I need context. If you need context, it's not well done. And I've got a few like that feel like they should be chopped off of that they were chopped off of a bigger story. And we'll get into that as we're reading them.
So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into talking about some of these horror stories, two-sentence horror stories that we have collected for you and where we rate them. I'll go ahead and start off. My father looked through the slats in the closet door, telling me it was safe and I could come out. None of that changes the fact that my father has brown eyes, not blue.
All right, I like that one. I wouldn't say I love it. It's a little obvious, but there's a few directions that could go in. There's a few different ways you can interpret it, and the left turn is there. All the boxes are checked. I put it around average. I give it a 3.
And listeners, you'll probably notice a pattern here that I generally rate things a little bit higher than Hatter because he's a little bit stiffer critic than I am.
I definitely am. It's just part of who I am.
And I tend to want to find the best in things, so I tend to be a little more forgiving. So you're going to rate it as a 3. I'm going to rate it as a 4. I do like it. I like the idea that the eyes being the giveaway that it's not his father. It could be a home invader who's just pretending to be his father. It could be a monster, a shapeshifter. There's a lot of places we can go for it. I'm going to go ahead and go with 4.
Okay, so here's one I found. As I watched the sun set over the forest, my blood ran cold. I knew I had to find shelter quickly or I wouldn't last the night. I'll let you talk about that one first, Gray.
I like it in concept because, of course, as it is very obvious, it is about a person being lost in the woods. And being lost in the woods is horrifying. Being, needing to find a shelter and not having the ability or knowledge to do so, especially if you're not an outdoorsy person, the idea that, well, I'm just going to die here can be really scary, but there's no left turn. It's super obvious. I'm giving that one actually probably a 2, just because while it's a super cool concept, I like the horror of being lost in the woods. There's nothing surprising about it, and it's really just not that creative.
Yeah, in concept, it is a solid story. Being lost in the woods is terrifying, but for a story, you need more than just concept. You need execution. This was executed poorly, like you said. There's no twist. It's just, I got lost in the forest. Yeah, that's scary. Cool. I'm giving it a 1.
Well, we're sticking to our formula here, so that's nice.
Yeah, seems like it. What do you got?
I was looking at my reflection in the mirror this morning. I saw it blink.
See, I like this one a lot. First of all, I'm going to say this now. I wouldn't call it a phobia, but I'm uncomfortable around mirrors. And I can't even begin to explain why. I just always have been. I can stand and look in one to fix my hair or whatever if I don't think about it, but something about me looking back at me is kind of freaky. And the idea of the reflection being sentient and acting differently from me, to me, that's just pure fantastic horror. And there's a twist there. All the boxes are checked. I'm going to give that one a 4.
And I really like this one as well, including it even has the element where you have to think about it a little. Now, I do want to put the caveat on a lot of these, especially the ones that I'm bringing up, is these are classic. You probably, if you are at all into 2 Cents Horror Stories, you've heard some of these before. So I definitely don't want to take away from it just because it's a classic, just because we may have heard it before. It was very original when it came out, just because it may not be as original now because things have copied it. So for me, I don't want to take any points away from it for that. And the fact that you do have to take just a moment to realize what the significance of seeing your reflection blink means, which is, of course, if you're blinking, you can't see the blink. Therefore, if you see your reflection blink, that means it's not behaving in the way a normal reflection does, and it's not following you. And then, of course, there's mirror monster ideas you can take from there. That's a classic for a reason. I'm giving it a solid 5.
Yeah, I could see it. It is a good story. And like I said, I'm kind of biased, though, and that's the reason I'm going to give it a 4, because I don't know if it's directly that scary, if it's just that weird thing I've got about mirrors, but it was a good one. Now this is one of my favorites that I pulled up. I really do like this one. I can't move, breathe, speak, hear, and it's so dark all of the time. If I knew it would be this lonely, I would have been cremated instead.
I love that one. There's horror, there's existential terror. There's even the implication of some body horror going on there. It has vibes from that one SCP about how we stay conscious after we die. There's even a little bit of Stephen King revival vibes in there, not the actual story elements, but the vibes. I adore that one. That's a solid 5.
We're going to see the pattern once again here. I'm going to give it a 4, and my only issue with it, and you might think this is dumb, I know we have to give a little bit of slack to the medium that they're telling this through, but how is he telling us the story?
Which, again, I agree with Hatter on this one. That is a flaw, but it's the sort of flaw that I have to give automatic grace to because, again, it's a Cents Horror Story, and you can only do so much with that. So he's going with 4. I'm going with solid 5.
Good stuff.
You may notice a theme here. I have a lot of mirror-themed ones. I like mirrors, and I like mirror-related horror.
See, I like things that scare me, so I don't dislike mirrors. Just, again, pointing out I've got a kind of weird, not even phobia, just an uncomfortableness about them, which I enjoy. It's a complicated thing, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was in my bedroom when I heard knocking on the glass. I went to check my window when I realized the sound was coming from my mirror.
See, that's a good one. All the boxes are checked. It's a very good story. Again, I'm going to be a little harsher on it because of my bias with my weird uncomfortableness around mirrors. I'm still going to go with a 3.5. It's not quite a 4 for me, but it's better than a 3.
See, and for me, again, I'm going to give that one a 5. And what bumps it up, and it would be a 4. I'm in perfect honesty, it would be a 4. What bumps it up to a 5 is, again, the thing that you have to think on it for a second, that the knocking on the glass coming from the mirror and the implication that there's something on the other side. And they did a good job of phrasing it so you expect it to be the window, and it ends up being the mirror. I think the twist, the left turn is well executed enough to bump it up all the way to a 5. So for me, it's a 5.
You know what? Those are all good points. I'm going to say a 4. I'm not going to say a 3.5. I'm going to give that one a 4. That's a good one. I really like things that make you think. So yeah, that's a big plus for me. But I got one here that's not going to make you think. Well, it will make you think, but for all the wrong reasons. Here it goes. Don't look behind you. It doesn't like to be seen.
I'm giving that a 1, maybe a 2. If I'm being super generous, it could get it. I'm going to give it a 1.5. I almost want to give it a 2 because I do like the idea of scary thing behind you. Don't look behind you is a scary concept. But the fact that there's no left turn, by the time they said don't look behind you, you know there's a thing behind you. There is no surprise here at all. So like 1.5 at most.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 1 for all the same reasons. That and my other rule, that it can't leave you thinking, what happens next, what happened before. It's not a completely self-contained story. Like, something knocking on the mirror, we know that's why that's scary. Who cares if this thing doesn't like to be seen? It could just be a guy with a bad haircut.
But yeah, solid concept, just terrible execution. So 1.5 for me.
Yep, as usual, I'm a little lower. I'm gonna go with a 1.
Now, here's one that I like, and for a very specific reason. I'll read it to you. I was in my bedroom when I heard my mother yell for help in the kitchen downstairs. As I was passing my mother's bedroom, I heard her say, "Don't go downstairs." I heard it too.
See, I've heard this one before, and I really like this one for a lot of reasons. The primary thing is it makes you think, because it gives you a few possibilities as to what could be wrong here. First of all, what if the woman that the person is talking to is actually the monster? And the terror is there. The idea is straightforward. There are two people claiming to be the same person, and one of them obviously isn't. I'm going to give this one a 4.
I'm going to give it a 5 because everything you said, I completely agree with. Also, I like it because I have literally used this as a hypothetical question. I like doing hypothetical questions on my TikTok channel. That's our main thing. Also, as a slight plug for our next episode, we will be doing horror hypothetical, and those are going to be super fun. But this is kind of a hypothetical question in itself, which is if you found yourself in this position where you heard two voices pretending to be the same person, what would you do? And that's such an interesting hypothetical, and I love hearing people's answers to that. And also, even though we didn't discuss this when we were planning the episode, I just thought of this and definitely wanted to put this in the episode, which is my wife and I actually have code words, which of course I will not disclose on the internet, that allow us to identify each other if we are either A, actually the other person, or B, even having to speak under duress. So
is it papaya?
Go ahead.
Is it papaya?
It is not papaya.
Is it bowling ball?
No, we're not talking about our safe words. We're talking about our code words.
Oh, is it spider?
No, that's the safe word.
Is it?
Okay, quit trying to give away our secret code words on the internet.
All right.
But because we're weird people who actually think about that kind of thing, this tickles my brain in all the right ways. 5 out of 5.
Yep, I give it a 4. All right. So I have one here that is interesting because it calls upon a lot of older horror stories, and there's a lot of ways it could be interpreted. As a biologist, I love all my animals, but sometimes I wonder to myself if any of them still remember that they were human once. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is the island of Dr. Moreau.
You see, and my interpretation was more to the horror stories of like a person keeping a serial killer type person, keeping people captive, making them dress as dogs or whatever, and treating them like animals and making them pretend to be. So I took it a kind of a different way. Those are both good interpretations. I like that. I'm kind of giving it a 3. It doesn't have like the horror, like gut-wrenching thing for me, but it's solid. I enjoyed it.
See, for me, it's a classic kind of horror. Like I said, brings me back to the island of Dr. Moreau. This is going to be the first situation where I'm going to give it a higher grade. I give it a 4.
Which is awesome. Well, it just goes to show, and of course it's something that I wish everyone would always keep in mind, is horror and all media is subjective. Just because something doesn't work for you doesn't mean it's not going to work better for someone else.
Exactly. So what do you got next?
All right, I have another super classic. If you're at all into 2-sentence horror stories, you've heard this. I began tucking my son into bed when he says, "Daddy, check under the bed because I think there's a monster." I check and see him, another him, shivering under the bed, whispering, "Daddy, there's something in my bed."
Chef's kiss, classic, perfect one. It even gets the kazoo of approval. That one's a 5. I'm going to give that one a 5.
5 out of 5 for me too. It's a classic for a reason. There's a reason it's probably one of the most famous horror story or 2-sentence horror stories of all time. 5 out of 5. It has the horror. It's very clear. I mean, there's no confusion. You know that one of the kids is a monster. We don't know which one it is. You know, that's the horror of not knowing, but it's very clear what's going on. It's very scary. There's a great twist. You don't see it coming if you've never heard it before. 5 out of 5.
And that's how I feel too. Like, it makes me think a lot. It makes me think, first of all, the kid under the bed, why is he under the bed? He has to be the monster. The kid on top of the bed might also be the monster. We don't know. And I saw a video a while ago, like when this one was new. I don't remember if it was like a web video, a short film, or if I saw it on a TV show, or if it was on that Netflix show. But it really bothered me because that video ended with the guy looking at the top of the bed and it being a monster. Like, no, you ruined it. You killed the mystery. What's wrong with you? You've lost the plot. I'm not going to turn into Gordon Ramsay here, but I was tempted.
Yes, we should refrain from you turning into an angry British man.
Is that a where, Gordon?
Have you ever been bitten by Gordon Ramsay?
Yes, but that's a story for another time.
And what happens at the London Sex Club stays at the London Sex Club.
Well, it wasn't in London, but again, story for another time. Anyway, moving on. I got the next one I've got is when actually when we were going over these, somehow I skipped over it. So you haven't heard this one yet.
All right, lay it on me.
No matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't get free of the chains I was bound in. I only hoped they'd hold once the full moon came out.
See, I like that one. That one's very classy, very classic. It's not as, classic as in classic two-sentence horror story, but I like that it invokes werewolves. It's not necessarily like the biggest twist ever and not necessarily as horrifying because, of course, we're all very desensitized to werewolves now. But I like it. It's a good werewolfy story. I'm going to give it like a 3.5. I could probably even be talked into a 4, but I'm going to stick with 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3.5 too, because that extra half a point, it's a 3, it's a good one, it's solid, it does what it's supposed to do. The extra half a point comes from the fact that, as you know from the previous one, I love the classics, and the classics will always get a little bit extra points from me. It's a good one. It's good.
All right, I've got another one here. The grinning face stares at me from the darkness beyond my bedroom window. I live on the 13th floor.
See, I think this one is good, but not great. And here's the issue I have, is like when they say the grinning face, it already invokes fear. And we know the twist could have been that it's something supernatural. They could have said something like, every night somebody stares into my bedroom window. I live on the 13th floor. I think that would have been so much better, because the twist would be that it's something supernatural, not just some creepy guy. Because then you got scary, then you have more scary. So I'm going with a 3. I think it could have been a lot better.
You see, and again, we're going to break our pattern a little. I'm giving it a 2. I think your story that you just corrected it to would be a 3. For this one, again, the grinning face kind of ruins the left turn. For me, it's a 2.
Yeah, I can see it. All right, so I've got actually a couple of fairly funny ones next. I think that horror and comedy mix well, but we'll see how these ones do.
Actually, before Hatter gets to those, I want to throw in one that is intentionally bad and very popular on TikTok right now, which is, gee, I haven't stubbed my toe in 4 months, I thought to myself. I was then shot 37 times.
So freaking stupid. I love it, though.
That one is stupid funny, but it's so stupid funny and intentionally stupid funny, I'm giving it a 5 to spite myself.
See, I think it's the right kind of stupid. It's not the brain rot kind of stupid. I've seen a lot of stuff like that, though, so we're going with the pattern. I'm going to give it a 4. I got another one for you from TikTok, though.
All right, lay it on me.
Oh, that's a good kitty, I say as I pet on Kitty. No, I am evil Kitty.
That one is equally stupid, but I don't think it's as funny. It's not as unexpected, but it's just, I'm going to give that one a 3, but I did enjoy it. I did chuckle.
Oh yeah, I agree. That one's not as good. I'm going to give it a 2 because I've seen it so many times now, but when I first heard it, it probably would have been a 3. But anyway, I had a couple of funny ones that we had found getting off the TikTok foray there. This one I thought was particularly funny. That jerk gave me the middle finger. I swear, Your Honor, I don't know where the rest of his body is.
See, I really like that one. That one's really funny. I think it does horror comedy really good. Because horror comedy is harder, I'm going to give it a 4. But I do think that one's solid. I like that one.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the situations where we're going to agree. I think, yeah, it's there. I'm not going to be thinking about it in 10 years, but it made me laugh.
Now, I actually want to interject with a similar one that kind of takes it away from a comedy direction. I asked my daughter how old she was, and she held up 3 fingers. The police have been here all night, but we still can't get her to tell us where she found them.
See, that one definitely has some comedy to it. It's just a different kind of comedy. It's like a black comedy, a darker comedy. And I think it mixes well. I think that's a good one. It's straightforward to the point. I'm going to give it a 4.
See, I'm going to go with 4 because I don't quite want to give it a 5 because it's not like, it doesn't have the pop of the ones for me that are 5s, but I'm also going to give it a 4, but it's like a good 4, like almost a 4.5, but I'm going to stick with just a 4.
Yep, that's how I feel. All right, I've got another semi-funny one here. Punctuality has never been my strong suit. As I sit here and watch the last ship leave from New Earth, I wish it was.
I like the concept. It has humor to it, but I almost feel like there is a funnier, horror-ier story in there somewhere. Like with some tweaks, that could have been both funnier and scarier. So I'm gonna call that a 2, but it had potential.
I'm going to say, yeah, the same. It had some potential, and I think it would have been better as a longer story, because it seems like with apocalyptic stories, you want to know more and more. And so it breaks one of the cardinal rules. As much as I laughed and I thought it was kind of a funny twist, I'm gonna have to go with a 2.
Now, I want to mention a couple that for me have a massive cardinal sin of two sentence horror stories. I'll read them to you and then we'll talk about them.
All right.
The new law requiring that all prisoners facing the death penalty were used as organ donors had the public's full support and saved countless lives. I'll level with you. We all know you're innocent, but the judge's daughter needs a kidney, and you're a perfect match, my lawyer whispered defeatedly as the trial began.
Yep, and I think I know what cardinal sins you're talking about. Why don't you let us know?
100%. And the cardinal sin here is that it is so wordy, it is so over bloated, it's barely even qualifies as two sentence because it has so much crammed in there. And while it's a cool concept, I mean, that is a 5 out of 5 concept. The idea of criminals being forced to be organ donors, and then of course people being sentenced to that unfairly. But we knew that was coming from the beginning as soon as they started, so there's no left turn. It's too wordy, it's not concise at all. So it's a 5 concept, but a 1 execution, so I'm going to give it like a 2.
Yeah, that's another one where I agree with you. Although, to me, execution's more important than concept, but still, yeah, I come around to 2.
Well, and that's why it's a 2 and not a 3, because while it's a 5 concept, the 1 execution drug it all the way down to a 2. So we're kind of at the same place. So I've got a couple that fall into this category. When science discovered the human soul, teleportation became the new best way to travel, since there was finally proof of something that transferred over. As I joined my thousands of copies in what can only be described as hell, I realized that science never proved the soul can't be duplicated, and I think whatever God is out there hates us for our mistake.
Yeah, that one definitely commits that cardinal sin. It's way too wordy. And write this into a full story. This is a fantastic concept.
Absolutely. Excellent concept. I like the idea. It's a little confusing about exactly what they're implying, although it does seem like the more you think on it, that of course it is the fact that we're duplicating the souls as we transfer, but are the souls left over the ones that are dying? Are the ones that replace the ones that are going? Who exactly is ending up in hell? As Hatter brought up when we were discussing this initially, that there's a cooler story in here about the existential terror of am I the clone, am I not the clone kind of thing. So I feel like this is a great concept, but the execution is just terrible.
Yeah, for me, it breaks 2 cardinal sins, actually. It's too wordy, and it leaves you thinking about what's going on around it. It's not just a self-contained story. I'm going to go with a 2.
I'm actually going to agree with you, going to go with a 2. I just think there's potential here, but it's again just drugged down by its execution.
All right, so the next one I've got is also a space travel one. The world was thrilled with the announcement that the first mission to Mars would be an all-female crew. 1 year later, the world was terrified when they all returned pregnant.
I like that one. Again, it's a classic. If you're into these types of stories, you've probably read that one before. And it's good. It has a good left turn. I'm gonna ding it down to a 3 for me, just because to me it's not terrifying. You can definitely take it in a scary way, but naturally, inherently, it's not super, super scary. So I'm gonna call it a 3, but it's a good 3.
Yeah, I'd put it around there too. It leaves you thinking about a lot of things, because like the horror could really be coming from, once again, human experimentation. Did they do something on that ship to make that happen? Were there aliens? What happened here? Something happened here, and we don't know what, and it makes us think. So yeah, about a 3.
All right, here's another one. Again, blink once for yes, twice for no, the rescuer said to the paralyzed kidnapping. He had asked if she was okay. He couldn't figure out why she kept looking behind him and blinking in groups of 3.
That's good. I like that. I don't love it, but I like it.
See, I like it too. I think it could be more concise. It would be a 5 if it was just a little bit better worded. But as it is, I do like and of course, in case anyone's not familiar with, by implying the groups of 3, they're implying the person is blinking in Morse code and blinking SOS, and looking behind them to imply that the serial killer is behind them, the kidnapper or whoever. But also SOS isn't quite what you would want to be blinking in that case. And people just love using SOS in two-sentence horror stories. So I like it. It's a solid concept, but there's just some not quite tight elements that could be tightened up. I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, I'm about there. I think it was okay. I don't know what's being implied. And again, this is where I come into it. Again, I go back to one of my cardinal rules. I really think that there's more to this story that we need to know or that we would want to know. And yeah, I'm gonna go with a 2, just because it broke one of my big rules. Okay, this next one's pretty good. I twisted and rolled over in bed, then froze when I saw something distinctly not human smile at me from my window. My heart almost stopped when I noticed it was a reflection.
You see, I like that one. It has a lot of implications. You know, is this a monster we're talking about, or is this someone who has just been transformed into a monster? You know, is it a monster that's in denial, or were they human whenever they went to bed? I like the implications. I like the story that it leads us down without leaving us wanting too much. You know, it actually does feel complete and self-contained. I'm giving it a 4. It's either a weak 4 or a strong 3. It's not quite a 3.5. I'm gonna commit to 4, but I'm not like in love with it. But I really liked it. I'm gonna give it a 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 3.5 for the same reasons.
All right, I've got another one, and this one reminds me of a Poe story. After sedating my cheating wife, I bricked her up alive in the wall of the house. After a week, her screams and sobs subsided, but now, 6 months later, they've started up again.
I like that one, and again, my bias for classic sounding horror stories, you know, are gonna earn this one extra points. And I like the implication here because, yeah, obviously, I mean, it's a little more obvious than the others. It's either that, you know, she's a ghost or he's gone insane and he's hearing her voice, which again, a la the Telltale Heart, is an interesting idea. I would say this one does it. I'm gonna give this one a 4.
Also gonna give this one a 4. I also want to point out, as you mentioned, it invokes the Telltale Heart. It also invokes the Cask of Amontadillo, I don't know how you pronounce that wine, but which is another Poe story about bricking someone up in a wall.
Yeah, I always thought, well, when it was read to me in school in like the 5th grade, which I was way too young for it, but they always said Amontillado, and it would depend on where in the world this took place. Do you know offhand?
I always felt the implication was it was in England because that's where Poe set some of his stuff, although could have been America. It's hard to tell.
Hold on, I'll check. Also, the guys' names were Montresor and what was the other guy's name?
Not sure off the top of my head.
Oh, Fortunato, which sounds distinctly Italian.
So the entire thing could be Italian.
It takes place in Italy, so I'm pretty sure it's Amontillado. I think the double L in Italian is a Y sound.
Well, that's what
I know it is in Spanish.
Well, that's what we'll go with. So like I said, I like it. I'm giving it a 4. It's solid. I don't think it's perfect, but I did enjoy it. I also like that there's a few different ways you could take it. I didn't actually mention this whenever we were discussing these beforehand, but there is another short story that I want to say is a Lovecraft story, but I might be wrong. In fact, I think I am wrong. But anyway, there's a short story about a gravedigger who goes to one of the little safety ring this if you have been buried alive bells with one of the talking horns, and this person comes saying, help, help, I've been buried alive, and the gravedigger's like, listening to them, like, please, you have to get me out of here. And he says, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And they're like, why aren't you going to rescue me? And the gravedigger says, because I'm looking at your tombstone and you've been buried for 5 years. Whatever you are down there, you're staying down there. And he walks off. Love that story, and this gives me those vibes too.
I love that too. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, I stick with it. I'd say this one's a 4. All right, I got one more. How many more do you have? Was that your last one?
That was my last one, so we'll do yours and then we'll wrap up.
Perfect. We actually managed to get the same amount of stories. The funniest part is here, I just want to bring this up. I missed one when we were reading over them, so we didn't know that we had exactly the same amount of stories, so that's good. I just thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, my last story. And this one is funny for a lot of reasons, and one that was revealed to me as I was reading it when we were doing the pregame thing. But I'm not going to tell you all why, because there are certain things we don't talk about on this channel. If you want to know, you can look it up. So here it goes. The world ending in 2012 wasn't a prophecy, it was a suggestion. We should have listened, but now he's here.
And I do like that one. Again, there is a thing from the person who actually wrote it, revealing what they were talking about. Again, we're not going to talk about that. We don't talk about those kind of things on this podcast. You can look it up. Now, not taking that into account, I'm going to give it a 3, because I almost think, again, without taking into account what the author's original intent was, it's better without that very last line, he's here. I sort of like it just as a commentary on the world, that it wasn't a prophecy, it was a suggestion, just nothing has been right since that year. And I can't really argue with that, so it gets a 3 for me.
Yeah, you know what? This is a rare situation. I agree with you. I think the story, there's a lot of things that could have been done better with this story. And I think that the he's here thing could have gone in a lot of scary directions, and it went in one of the most terrifying ones possible. But again, we don't talk about that stuff. Yeah, about a 3. I think it could have been a lot better, but it definitely invokes some things.
All right, folks, that's all we have. Please, in the comments, let us know what your favorite 2-sentence horror story is. If we missed one, let us know and we'll give you our opinions on it. And if you guys give us enough of them, we may do another episode where we talk about all the ones you've given us.
Even better, make up some of your own, and if they're good, maybe we'll read them in shorts.
Oh, I would love that. If you guys have any original 2-sentence horror stories, hit us with them. We would love that.
All right, but I think that's all we got for now. This has been a fun little side story here. Did you have anything else to add, Gray?
Just that I wanted to let everyone know that these little shorter rabbit hole videos, these shorter episodes, are going to be a thing. We're going to be posting them every other week, so stay tuned for these if you enjoyed them.
All right, well, this has been Liminal Radio. I'm Hatter.
And I'm Gray, and thank you for joining us on the Station Between Station for a brief rabbit hole adventure.
Hey everyone, Hatter here, and I want to thank you once again for joining us on the Station Between Stations, and I want to address something that was going on in this video. You'll notice that there's some artwork. I wanted to spice things up a little bit for this. Being that it's much shorter than our typical podcast video, I felt like I had the time to actually do that. Now, you're going to notice something, I'm sure you all noticed, the artwork is AI generated. As much as Gray and I would like to hire a real artist to do our artwork for us, and maybe that'll be in the cards in the future, neither of us can afford it right now. I mean, neither of us is broke, but all the money we're currently making is going to, keep us alive, and we can't do the podcast if we're not that. We would love to find somebody who just wants to do the artwork for us, but it feels scummier than even using AI artwork to have somebody do that for us for free. Though we wouldn't say no to it. For the time being, though, if people really don't like the AI artwork, I'll stick with just the channel logo. But I thought that would spice things up a little bit, and in the future, when there's money coming in from this channel, we will probably hire an artist. Anyway, thank you for joining us on this somewhat shorter video. Thank you for joining us on our longer videos, and we really appreciate the people we have right now. Make sure you're sharing with your friends. Make sure you're subscribing. It really, really helps.